The Donkey Kong series has held a peculiar reputation in Nintendo's utility belt of iconic IP, a reputation I would only consider comparable to Metroid. Both series hardly release new entries when compared to the likes of Mario or Zelda, but when they do release, these games are typically stellar and some of the best in their genre.
It's always such a momentous occasion anytime one comes out, and you can tell just how much the Nintendo fandom loves these games by the reaction that they have anytime new entries are announced.
Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze are two of the best 2D platformers of all time, and that goes doubly so for the Super Nintendo trilogy. Many enthusiasts of the genre claim that Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, is the greatest 2D platformer ever made.
And you're gonna have to take Dylan's word on this one because my experience with the DK series is about as extensive as his knowledge on graphics technology.
Oddly enough, the series has been pretty stagnant for the past decade. All we've really gotten are Switch ports of Returns and Tropical Freeze. Even more odd was the series' avoidance of 3D. In 1999, Rare attempted it with Donkey Kong 64, and it's one of those weird games with a truly split reputation. Some people absolutely adore it, while other people claim that it was responsible for the long absence and near death of the 3D platformer genre.
Thankfully, with all of the ports and retro emulation offered through Nintendo Switch Online, it has never been easier for someone like me to finally dive into the series. Considering how much of a departure this game is from the typical DK formula, it's sure to surprise both new and old fans alike.
When Donkey Kong Bananza was announced, I was pretty excited simply because it had been 26 years since the last 3D Donkey Kong. Not only that, but it was reportedly made by the same team who developed Super Mario Odyssey, which both intrigued me and worried me. More on that later.
This was actually a key selling point for me, as someone who loved Odyssey so much that I went back through and got all 999 Power Moons. Another game from the same team was a no-brainer for me. I mean, so much of that DNA is present here that up until the point where Donkey Kong busts through the wall in the initial trailer, I was convinced that it was actually a reveal for Odyssey 2.
Bananza released within the same week of my birthday, and has been tradition for the past few years. I took a few days off of work. You only get one birthday a year, so hell, might as well not work on it. I stocked up on some snacks and drinks, and even got a Switch 2 Pro controller, which I guess is kind of cool, but not a substantial upgrade at all from the Switch 1 Pro controller. When the clock struck midnight, I got into my cozy chair, grabbed a drink, and started up Bananza. Unfortunately, it seems like the rough economy has even affected our main monkey, DK, because he's had to get a job. The game opens up with us in the middle of him working as some sort of excavator in a mine, but of course, DK is in this just for the bananas. One thing I absolutely adore is how immediately when the game starts, the main gameplay does too. We're smashing through walls and the ground literally within seconds.
This is such a refreshing change of pace too, as so many games these days feel the need to spend the first 2 hours or so giving you endless amounts of tutorials and repetitive prompts just to remind you how to do the most basic commands.
The controls felt great from the beginning, except with one exception. I had to swap the jump button to B. After that, I was in heaven with the overall game feel. DK just feels appropriately heavy, and there's a nice chunkiness to punching through walls of stone. The game is also constantly giving you gold nuggets, which is the main currency here, so it never feels like you're getting nothing for breaking through floors and walls.
Everything here feels intentionally designed to work harmoniously to always be giving you a feeling of progression and accomplishment. Even just mindlessly punching through the ground can end up unintentionally leading you to finding one of the game's main collectibles, the Banandium Gems. Think of these like the Power Moons or Stars from the 3D Mario series to get a better idea of their implementation. Also, like the Mario games, Banandium Gems can be earned for doing any number of different tasks like completing a mission, solving a puzzle, or simply stumbling across them while exploring. The best part about getting these gems is that it plays this little voiceover that, even by the end of the game, did not get old and was always satisfying to hear.
DK can jump, punch in 3 directions, and rip up pieces of the ground for an attack or land surfing. I think in terms of movement, DK actually feels better than Mario ever has. Well, except for Mario Sunshine, which JER sadly does not have the sophisticated taste to love as much as I do. Don't worry, buddy, there will be another Sunshine reference in this video. There's also the Bananza powers, which allow DK to take on monstrous, huge forms to boost his platforming or destructive capabilities.
I love these powers and how they can be pretty transformative to gameplay, allowing you to do things like jump higher, glide, and destroy terrain at crazy rates. But honestly, outside of a few bosses, gems, and challenges, these Bananza powers feel a little forgotten. It would have been nice to see them utilized a bit more, having the required terrain or situations for each being a bit more common.
These powers also have a time limit, which we can upgrade later in the game by collecting bananas, which brings me to the last main point of the gameplay here, the upgrades. A couple of years ago, I made a joke that the next Mario game would allow you to upgrade Mario's moveset via a skill tree, and what we have here is basically what I just described. Now, typically, my argument against skill trees and platformers boils down to this. Instead of just giving the player a full and powerful moveset, you have to weaken and fragment their abilities and turn those fragments into upgrades. While that sounds very negative, the skill tree here didn't bother me too much in Bananza.
I'd say it actually has quite the opposite effect here, with DK being pretty great to use right from the start, and everything in the skill tree feeling like actual upgrades rather than abilities that have been stripped from you just for the sake of having a progression system.
Honestly, my biggest problem with this game is how the bananas, the main collectible, just didn't feel very valuable. And I had the same issue with Super Mario Odyssey. In Odyssey, you'd literally be getting power moons for just nothing. Sometimes just for walking around a corner or a blatantly obvious path.
Yeah, at the start, finding these gems was a very rewarding experience and felt like I had done something significant. But then there are sections later on where I'm finding 5 or 6 banandiums back to back in the span of a few minutes, and finding them really starts to lose its luster.
Now, when you compare that to the Power Stars in Super Mario Galaxy or the Shine Sprites in Super Mario Sunshine, whenever you got one of those, it truly felt like a moment, like you achieved something. Say what you want about the janky, bizarre level design present in Super Mario Sunshine, but the Pachinko level or the Sandbird level are burned into my memory. They were experiences.
Yeah, experiences I'd like to forget.
Now, when you compare that to Bananza, which is constantly giving you gold nuggets and bananas, I truly can't remember any of the bananas feeling special or memorable, except with the big shiny batches of bananas that you get for beating bosses. By having a skill tree that makes the bananas necessary as a currency, you make each banana feel less special, which sucks. Compare that to last year's stellar Game of the Year winner, Astrobot, which had far fewer bots to collect.
Astrobot really did have just about the perfect amount of content, giving you enough to be satisfying without overstaying its welcome.
Bananza has 777 bananas, while Astrobot had 300 bots before the DLC. Super Mario Galaxy 2 had 242 stars. I honestly think that once you start nearing 400, the collectibles just start to become a blur.
And with this being the same team that made Odyssey, which had 999 power moons, you can start to see where some of those design choices are stemming from.
Again, I'll just never forget collecting my favorite bots in Astrobot. The levels felt intentionally designed, and the bots felt well hidden and rewarding. But by having 777 bananas and a constant stream of gold nuggets, there almost becomes like a sense of mindlessness. There's almost like a mobile gamey feel to it with how much stuff you're just getting constantly.
That's actually something I've gone back and forth on with this game the entire time I was playing it. It's always scratching that itch and giving you something to be excited about every few seconds that I basically never felt any sort of boredom that would make me inevitably pull out my phone. At the same time though, it almost feels like the game never stops to catch its breath either, as it's constantly just funneling you into finding the next gem or doing the next mission. I do have to wonder how much the whole instant dopamine hit design of apps like TikTok and Instagram Reels have played into the choices made here. At the very least though, there's never a moment where I'm feeling bored just waiting for the game to let me back into the action, which honestly says a lot about how good the gameplay is, but also how little the story gets in the way of it.
So very quickly, we see that Void, the new enemy here, and Void Company wreck the place, sucking in any loose Banandium gem that isn't nailed down. And we befriend a talking rock. Now, one thing I wasn't sure of, because I avoided almost every trailer for this game after the announcement trailer, is whether or not Bananza is a reboot or another sequel in the Donkey Kong series. Our main monkey is not only sporting a brand new look, but Pauline is a child in this game instead of her usual grown self. Well, luckily my question is answered within the game, but I won't spoil anything for the very few of you who actually care about Donkey Kong lore. I will say this vague hint though. The game definitely has my favorite finale of any Nintendo game in the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's bombastic, triumphant, and provides just enough fan service to not be tacky, and is surely an ending I won't soon forget. What I found particularly strange about this game's rollout though, is how Nintendo was really trying to keep under wraps that the purple stone from the reveal trailer, known as Odd Rock, was actually Pauline trapped inside. It felt like they wanted to have this big, surprising reveal that the strange stone was actually her the whole time, but then just blatantly made the reveal themselves in the following direct, even swapping out Odd Rock for Pauline in the key art.
I usually do not watch trailers for games I want besides their reveal trailer, so I actually didn't catch this, but yeah, it's a Donkey Kong game, so there's no need for a deep story analysis, but what's here is cute and fun.
With Mario Kart World not quite being the graphical powerhouse for Nintendo Switch 2 that I think early adopters were hoping for, DK Bananza certainly feels much more like that quintessential title that really showcases the new hardware. It's immediately obvious why this is a game that can only run on Switch 2's more powerful hardware and is really something to behold in handheld mode. A bit controversial, but our titular ape even has a new design, sporting a bit more of his retro look, especially noticeable around the eyes, and comes across just a little bit friendlier as a result, and I find this to be a good change. The main premise of this game is that it takes place entirely underground. You would think that this would make the game feel dark, lonely, and claustrophobic, but surprisingly each of the game's underground layers and sublayers feel vast, open, and full of life. There's a full mining facility layer, a jungle, and even a beach resort. The explanation given for why these locations still have so much sunlight is that the inhabitants have mined a bright, glowing resource and used it to create artificial suns. It's a bit of a stretch, sure, but it also means that each layer isn't contained to a skybox that's just basic blue, and the developers were able to get a bit more creative with it.
I absolutely love the colors displayed here. This game is a visual feast, and it's always memorable when games mess around with weird colored grass or skies. However, having the sky always visible kind of confused me and messed with my head because this game is supposed to take place on the ground, right? Like, it's a little weird that you can always see the sky.
It can often be easy to forget that you're 500 layers deep under the Earth's surface as a result, but I still like what they did here nonetheless. Apart from the sky, I'm also quite fond of the way elements across the world lean into the whole primate theme, with plenty of objects shaped like bananas, and even smaller details like these leaves that are shaped like orangutan faces. This is a perfect example of just how much detail and charm Nintendo can inject into their games now with the Switch 2's hardware. Unfortunately, it seems that even the Switch 2's performance can't save this game from some pretty rough frame rate drops. For the most part, the game runs at a pretty locked 60 FPS, but there are occasions where the action on screen is just too much for the console to handle, and frame rate dips into sub-20 territory. This seems to really only happen during some of the boss fights, and so in normal gameplay, we almost never encountered it.
I'll be honest, before the PS5 and the Xbox Series generation, I couldn't really see frame rate. But now I totally see the difference between 30 and 60, and I often find 30 really rough to go back to. However, I guess my eyes aren't nearly as trained as JER's are because I felt like Bananza was pretty damn smooth all throughout. But I can safely say I did notice some frame drops during the bosses in the second half of the game.
Yeah, it's really only those later boss fights that seem to impact performance, and so we'll avoid showing them here for spoiler reasons. But regardless, you can expect a pretty consistent 60 for most of the game.
All in all, I think Donkey Kong Bananza succeeded in giving fans a good reason to purchase a Switch 2 early in its lifespan. And it absolutely broke the anti-3D curse the series has been under for 2 decades. It's a fun, although slightly mindless game to play.
I'm glad Nintendo was able to get it out only a month after the Switch 2's release, as this is a much better representation of the console's capabilities than Mario Kart World.
Is it better than any of the home console 2D Donkey Kong games? Absolutely not. But I'm glad we got it anyway. And I do wonder how this game will be remembered because it's only been a couple of months and I'm already starting to see some opinions on it start to sour.
At the same time, I know people personally who enjoyed it so much that they've already gotten every single one of the 777 Banandium gems. So this might be yet another divisive game for the Switch 2. It seems to both of us that Nintendo is taking inspiration from the wrong elements of what made the open worlds of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom so successful, instead of understanding why those two games worked so well.
They're definitely on their open world, bigger is better phase after the success of the last 2 3D Zeldas, and I think we're learning the hard way with the Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bananza that sometimes less is more.